Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be giving you a beginner's guide to using Magix Movie Edit Pro 2020. Okay, so on my desktop I've got this folder, and inside this folder I've got these various subfolders. I've got green screen video, images, music, transparent PNG and video. So I'm going to open up this notepad file, and this contains all of the content that I've downloaded, so you need to go and download the same content yourself. I'll put all of these into the YouTube description. So if you look at the description on YouTube or Facebook, you should see all of these links listed. I'm just going to show you how to download a few of these quickly, and then you can go ahead and download the same ones. Try and create the same folder structure that you see here, green screen for example. So when I go inside there, I'll see this one video. So if I want to download that video, just click on the link in the description. So you'll see that in the YouTube or Facebook description. It should take you to this page. Click free download and download this at 3840 by 2160. Just click the download button. When you click that, it will start to download that particular video clip, and then you can save that into that particular directory. So that's the green screen one. Here's a transparent PNG. Let's open up the web browser again. For this one, you'll see a transparent PNG because I want to show you how to use transparent images. Just click the free download. You can download that at 1920 by 1024. Just click that green download button. You'll notice that all of the content is coming from the same website, Pixabay. Let me show you the video content. So you just go and click on the link. It will take you to this video. Click free download and make sure you download all the video content at 1920 by 1080. This resolution, yeah? This one here. So all of these 9 videos, you'll download them all at that same resolution. For the images, we'll go back to this same website, click on the link in the YouTube description, or you see this on Facebook, click here and then download that at 1920 by 12. This will be 1280. Really, you want 1920 by whatever resolution it is. The width doesn't matter too much, the height is quite important. We're going to stretch these images out anyway. Click the download button and just repeat that for all of the images. And then finally, we've got some music. Let's copy this link, and that will take us to YouTube audio library, right? So here you can download loads of music tracks. They're royalty free, so you can play them on YouTube or on Facebook, anywhere you want to play them. You're not going to get any copyright issues. I've given you 3 track names that I've downloaded. Waterfall, for example, and I'll go to the search music, type that in there and then search for it, and then look down the list and you're going to see Waterfall here, and just go ahead and click the download button and that will download the MP3 file. So once you're done, you should have a green screen folder with 1 video. You should have an images folder with 8 images. You will have a music folder with 3 music tracks, a transparent folder with just a single image, and then a video folder with 9 videos. So the goal is here to get all of this content onto your computer. So if you want to pause this video at this point, download all of this content onto your computer. It's all free to use, so you ain't gonna have any sort of copyright issues, anything like that. And we want to show you in this tutorial loads of different ways to use Magix Movie Edit Pro. So I want to show you how to sequence images, how to use the green screen, chroma key, how to use transparent images, and how to do transitions between video clips and add music. So we're going to do quite a lot of different things in this video, and you're going to learn lots of different techniques on how to do different edits in Magix Movie Edit Pro. So let's close this folder. Hopefully you've paused the video and you've gone and downloaded all of that content. Okay, so I'm going to open up Magix Movie Edit Pro. Let's go to File, New, and in the settings here, depending on what sort of content you want to create, there's loads of different options in here, right, to create different formats and different sizes. You've got Powerful HD, 24 frames a second, but if we scroll down to NTSC, we can do HDTV 1080p, 1080i, 16 by 9, 1920 by 1080 at 29 frames a second, right? So I'm going to select this one here, and I'm going to leave the audio samples at the full amount, and everything else I'll leave pretty much as default and click Create Project. So I want to save this work. Let's go to File, Save Project As, and we'll go to this PC. Let's go to my desktop, and we'll go into this projects folder, and in the root of the folder, I'm just going to call this, let's just call this Ocean Life -01. So I'm just give it a file name and save it. So we've saved our Magix Movie Edit profile. When we open up this folder, we'll see that file in there. So any edits we do, we'll always save our work. Just keep overwriting this file as we go along. Okay, so in Magix Movie Edit Pro, in the import section here, I'm going to go to my computer. In fact, I'll go to the user. I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and then I'm going to go into the folder, because now I can see all the subfolders, right? There's a couple of options here. You can either drag from the subfolder into Magix Movie Edit Pro like this, or you can just navigate to that same location on your desktop inside Magix Movie Edit Pro, and then you're going to see all the folders here, which makes life a lot easier. And we've got green screen, images, music, transparent, and video. So I want to start off with a video. Let's open up the video folder. If you don't see these thumbnails like this, you need to click in here and select large icon. So you've got like detailed view, you've got list view, and we've got large icon. And then you can click on this plus sign, minus sign, and you can zoom in and out to see those icons a bit clearer. I'm going to leave it around this size because we've got 9 in there, we can see all 9. So we just need to pick which video we want to start off with. I think we'll start off with this ocean one in the middle. This is entirely your choice, but let's start off with this one. I'll drag and drop that onto the timeline. And it's going to ask me to adjust the frame rate because our default frame rate is 29.97 frames a second, but the video content itself is 30 frames a second, so we'll click adjust. So on the timeline now, we can scrub we can just left click here on this timeline cursor, and we can scrub across and we can see the video content. Now what you'll note is the position of the timeline is shown here in terms of frames and seconds and minutes. So as we scrub across, this will be 6 seconds and 24 frames, right? And if we move across a little bit more, you'll see that will increment and so forth. And the total duration of this video clip at present, or the actual movie itself, will be displayed here. So it's 31 seconds and 12 frames. That's the total duration of this clip. But as and when we add more video content, this value will start to increase as well. Let's just click on the save button. Okay, so this particular clip is 31 seconds long and it's way too long for an intro. We just want a quick intro, right? Something around 10 seconds. As we move this cursor, we left click and move it across the screen. We want to get to around 10 seconds. So you can see here it says 5, this says 10, this says 15, 20. So these are increments of 5 seconds. This will be 20 seconds. So I'm going to move the cursor along to around 10 seconds. How do I know if it's exactly 10 seconds? If I look at the cursor up here, it says 10:21, right? 10:21. And what I'll do is click down here on the timeline cursor and use the arrow keys. So I use the left arrow key to move left and the right one to move right. So we're going to move to the left, and you can see in the top corner here, we're at 10:01. So I'm just going to move one more frame and that'll be exactly 10 seconds. I'm going to click on this clip and use the cut tool here. This is called the split tool. So I'm going to select that and we'll split it left and right. So let's click on this right one and we'll hit the delete key. So now we've got a 10-second frame. Now as normal, I would normally have just the mouse mode selected. So let's select mouse mode as default, and that just allows us to click on clips and resize them and do other things, what I'm going to show you a bit later. So we've got a 10-second video here. We should save our work. Okay, so it would be nice to have a sort of text introduction about what this video is going to be about. So what I'll do is go to right now we're looking at import here. So we're going to go to templates, and inside templates you've got all of these different options. I've made some tutorials like specifically on the individual elements in here. So if you check the check my YouTube channel, you'll see different tutorials, little bite-sized ones on specific elements in here. But I'm going to click on movement basic here under title templates, movement basic, and when I click on any of these, if I click the play button, it will kind of give me an idea of what's going on here. What would that title look like? So you've got ones that zoom in like this, you've got all these different ones, right? Ones that will zoom to the top corner, you've got ones that will fade out, kind of smooth out, and ones that go from left to right. But I'm going to use this one here. It's called jump out. It does this. So I'm going to drag that to the second row on this timeline, and then up pops Laurie Lipson, right? So inside here we want to type something. This is the title editor. It's called the title editor. We'll click inside here and we'll type in something like ocean life. So I'm going to type in ocean life and I'm going to click this tick button, and that just confirms that text, right? So that says ocean life in here, and if we drag across the timeline you can kind of see it. It will sort of do this zoom sort of effect, right? That's what we want. But we want to improve this text, so let's click on the actual text content here. It will highlight yellow. So whenever you left click outside, you can see the title editor is empty. When you click on a title, if it is a title, then the title editor will show. If you're in templates or somewhere like this and you click on the title editor, let's click on it, it won't show in here. So you need to go to effects and make sure you click on title editing here. Then you'll see the content. So you've got different options. You can make it bold. Let's in fact increase the size. Let's set it to something like 110. It's nice and big like that, right? So you can make it bold. You can make it italic. You can do underline. Let's do underline. You should underline. Let's see, click here. Maybe this particular font you can't underline it, but normally you can underline text. You've got the positioning left, right, center, like that, and then you've got this drop shadow option. So you can do a drop shadow, and you can change like the blur settings. You can experiment with this stuff, right? The transparency, like this, so you can see how it's affecting the text. I'm going to turn that one off because I want to use the borders. So I'm going to click borders, and right now it's set to border width of 2 and it's set to white. So if we were to click here and click black and click OK, then we see this nice little border around it. But I don't really want that. What I want to do is set the border width to, I'm going to left click twice inside here and set it to a value of 4. So now you can see this nice thick border around it. But I'm actually going to click here and change it back to white color, white here, and then click OK. If you want to change the text color, you can click here and change it to red, for example. Then it will be red like this with a white border around it. But I'm actually going to untick filled here, and I'm going to leave it like this. So it's going to have this white border, but it's going to be transparent so that we can see the video content behind it. And what I want to do is just add like a little double effect on here. So to do that, what I'll do is click on this title here. Let's click on it, and I'm going to press Control C to copy. Control C to copy. I'll move across the timeline to a different position away from this object and press Control V to paste. And now I've got this twice, right? Why would I want that? I want to overlap them. So I'm going to take this one and drag it below and stagger it a little bit. So make sure there's a little gap at the beginning. And if we move back, we'll see like this double effect, right? Like this, which I quite like. I think it looks pretty cool, right? So there's one problem we have. If we click play, we're going to hear some sound. Let's hear this. So let's click play. And we kind of hear this ocean sound. I don't want to hear that. So to mute this, there's two ways to do that. We can right click, go to audio functions, and inside the audio functions, go to set volume, and we can set it to 0 dB. And in theory, that should, actually that doesn't mute it. What we need to do is click here. 0 dB is, the way to do this is to click here and drag it all the way down. That's the only way you can do it. You have to drag it all the way down. So when we move over a video clip, there's an option above to click and drag down, and that's like the transparency of the image, or the brightness of the image, I should say. But right above it, or I should say right below it, there's one for the audio. If we click here and drag all the way down, that will mute it. Now if we click play, we won't hear all of that audio. We don't really want to hear that. Right, so we've got this double effect. We might cut this clip down, it's quite long, but let's go ahead and save our work. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is try and improve the color quality inside of this video clip. So let's click on the video clip, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can go to the effect settings, and you can change the brightness. So we'll click on brightness, and we can increase or decrease the brightness like this. If you make a setting, or if you change something in here and you don't like it, what you can do is click up here, and this will reset everything. So we'll click here and it will reset it. Because it's a little bit washed out, so you can go and color correct. Using these settings, you can add a bit more blue to it, you can add tints to it and stuff like this. Again, I'll click here to undo that. There's another way to do this, a much quicker way. I'm not saying it's the right way. It depends on if you want to be quite finite with your color correction. But if you go to templates, and if you scroll down here, let's just scroll down here, and we'll go to film look basic. So when we click on here, we get these pre-made color options. Yeah, these are like pre-made ones that we can just click on and basically just drag and drop them. So let's say we take something like clean. Clean is normally pretty good, so we drag this one onto the video clip, and it will just improve the visual quality of this particular clip. If you don't like that one, you can drag a different one. If you look at the video clip, it will actually say which one has been applied, the color correction here. It will write it across the top here, right? And if we click this one like warm and drag that one, then it will have this sort of warm effect. And then there's loads of different ones in here. There's loads of different examples or pre-made ones. You can even do like 1960s sort of film, like a movie effect, right? You can see like this 1960s sort of grainy sort of film effect. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that one, and I'm going to use the clean one. So I'm going to drag this one and drag it on top, and then it will apply that clean effect. And you can go in and adjust this, but I quite like this particular effect that's been applied. Right, and you've got your ocean life, and there you go. So there's one more thing I want to add to this intro. I just want to add this sort of splash effect from this PNG. So let's go to import, and inside import, this is where we have all of our content, right? We want to go back a directory, so we click that arrow here, and we'll go to the transparent PNG, and we're going to drag that onto the timeline below. And now we've got this sort of splash effect, right? I just want to have that. I mean, it's not really necessary to have it, but I just want to show you that we can use transparent PNGs. Maybe we'll click on it, and what we'll do is go to effects, and inside effects we can possibly, let's see, you can change its brightness. I think it doesn't really seem, yeah, we can change the color, but I don't think we'll do that. Let's undo that. Let's go to brightness. I think black and white looks pretty cool like this. I don't want to change its size, so what I'll do is go to, let's click on that particular graphic. We'll scroll down here and we'll go to size and position, and we're going to zoom out. I want to make it smaller, something like this sort of size, and I'm going to click on this little handle at the top, and that allows me to rotate it, and then we can click inside the clip and we can just move it to somewhere like here, just to have that sort of splash effect, right? So if we just move across, now we'll kind of see that in the corner. And you can, you can get rid of that if you don't want it. I'm just showing you how to use PNGs. That's kind of the point. So we want to do a little bit of work on this sequencing. We've got our content there. Let's sequence it a little bit better. So the first thing we'll do is fade. So if I hold down the shift key on my keyboard, I'm going to hold down the shift key, and then I can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out on the height of this content. So I can make it very, very narrow, or I can zoom in. Now some of the functions would, if you have it very, very narrow, some of the functions for editing the clip in the timeline will not be available. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and zoom in, so I can see the box about this sort of height, and in the top left hand corner I can drag across here like this, and this will add a fade. It will fade from black, yeah. So when we go to the beginning of the timeline, this ocean clip will fade in nicely like this. But I'm going to move the timeline to where the fade stops, around here. So around this position, it's always fully faded in. I'm going to click on this ocean text and then hold down the shift key and click on the bottom one, and I'm going to drag these across, and as I drag across it will snap. I've got this magnet tool option enabled, and that will snap it to the timeline cursor here. So now really, if we go back and click play, it will fade in, and then you've got this ocean life here like this, right? And then those will fade out. We've still got this little graphic in the corner. With that graphic, let's just we can move down the timeline here like this, or I believe you can hold down the Alt key and use the mouse wheel to move up and down the timeline, so you don't have to move to here and drag it. So we'll hold down the Alt key and drag down, and with this particular water clip, or the image, we can fade that one as well. So let's just see, let's move back across the timeline, and maybe we'll fade this. Let's drag this to where this second sort of clip appears, the ocean clip of this text, right? So I'm positioning it against this one. I'll hold down the shift key. I'm just going to use the mouse wheel to zoom out a little bit, then I'll hold down the Alt key and use the mouse wheel to move up, so I can see all of the content here. So we've pretty much sequenced the beginning part. We're going to add audio more towards the end of this project, but I want to do some cutting here. So this is roughly where the ocean text fades out, and we're going to fade out our little graphic in the corner here. So let's click on the graphic. I'm going to leave a little space here, this little gap. I'll use the cut tool. Let's delete the end part, and then we can click here and fade this out as well. So now we can see that will fade out. This little graphic in the corner will fade out. You could leave it there throughout the whole duration. That graphic there could have been like your little watermark logo or something like this. And then once that fades out, we're going to move across the timeline a bit more to about this position. Here we're going to leave like another little gap, maybe about half a second or so. We'll click here and we'll cut and we'll delete this end part. This is kind of the beginning part of our introduction, you could say, right? And then now we can start to add more video clips afterwards and add transitions. So let's go ahead and click the save button here. Okay, let's go ahead and add our second video clip. Let's go back to the import. We'll click this arrow to go back. We'll go to the video clips. We know you used this one already. So let's take this second one and maybe we'll add them in sequence as they are like here. Let's take this one and drag it to the timeline. When we drag it to the timeline, let's just click here and see if there's any audio. So there's no audio on this one, but we can mute it anyway. We'll click here and drag down to mute it. And we want to overlap these. Now, as you drag this handle across, if you look where my mouse cursor is right now, it says 6 seconds and 15 frames, right? You can see that written above there, 6 seconds and 15 frames. When I let go of the mouse button, that will disappear. So this is how I do the transitions normally. I'll click here, drag across, and it will snap to the end of the first clip. And it says 6 seconds and 15 frames. In fact, a little tip for you. If you hold down the shift key and use your, hold down the control key and use your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out of the timeline. And we want to zoom in a bit closer. We want to zoom, just a little bit closer. Right now it's at 74%. If you look here, it says 74 right here. And I'm going to click on this clip, drag it across. It says 6 seconds and 15 frames. I'm going to drag it across to 5 seconds and 15 frames. Let's go to 5 seconds and 15 frames. Let's do that there. That's 5 seconds and 15 frames. We're going to need to adjust this water thing here. So we're just going to left click on it on the side, hold down the left mouse button and drag it across to this position, so it will fade out. And then we've got our crossfade here. So if we click here and click play, it will crossfade across these two video clips, but I want to use a transition. Let's go to templates, and we looked at in this my previous tutorial. You can see all the different types of transitions. Normally I use something like movement basic or shape fills, these shapes and objects. Let's click here and we can pick one of these. I quite like these white ones, but maybe today we'll use something a little bit different. Rings growing is quite good, or you've got the circle around it. Let's try this one. So we drag and drop that into the transition here, right here. Let's let it go, let go of the left mouse button and click play, and you'll see that transition now, like these circles. So we'll click here. And if you don't like that, you can stop the video and just pick a different one. Let's say like this search one. Now when you drag them, you can see the grey box is quite large. So if you drag this to a small transition, it may not look too good. So let's drag and drop it anyway. And if we go back and click play, we can see that transition. I mean, it doesn't look too bad, but normally when you drag something like a transition, you can see they're quite large. Really, you want your transition to be that large in terms of the crossfade, right? So when we take something like this, you can see it's much smaller. We can drag and drop that, and it's kind of built for that sort of duration, the transition. So it's nice and smooth. So I'm going to stick with when I do transitions, I normally only stick to one or two types. Let's say, let's try this one. We'll click play. The Sona one. I think what I'm going to do is stick to the ones that I normally use. So it's like these two here, the left and right ones. So let's click the left one and drag it here, and you can check that one out. It's kind of this swipe effect. I quite like it. It's very, very smooth. It looks good. So let's move across the timeline. And this transition ends on 6:15, right? So let's say we want this video to play for 5 seconds. We need to do a little bit of maths here. So we want it to be on 15 frames. Or let's call it 12 seconds. Yeah, just to round it up, make life a little bit easier. So we move across the timeline to 12 seconds. So as I drag across, I can see I'm on 12 seconds on one frame. So I use the left arrow key and then I'm going to click here. That would actually be 10 seconds, wouldn't it? Let's see, 6:15. Yeah, so it'd be 11. Yeah, 12 seconds should be fine. It's just over 5 seconds. Yeah, 12 should be fine. That should be fine. Right here, 12 seconds. We'll click here. We'll use the cut tool and we'll delete the end part. And we can drag in our next video clip. So let's go back to import. And we'll drag this one in, and then let's just move over it and click play. Again, this one's muted, but we'll just Let's see, I don't think this one had any audio track. If it has no audio track, then you won't see the second option above here. This one's for like the transparency, but there's no second option. So this one didn't have an audio track at all. So let's move this and drag it to here, to this position. This is on 14, now we're on, let's see, 12, and we're going to drag it across to 11. So we have that 1 second crossfade. Now we can see 11 here. We'll let go, so that's 1 second here. We'll go to templates and we'll drag the right one in here. Let's drag that one, and then we'll move to here and we'll click play, and we can see it will swipe this way. All right, we can just keep repeating that. So we know this transition ends on 12, so 12 plus 5 is 17. So we'll move to 17 seconds. Let's move to 17 and we'll click here and we'll cut this and we'll delete this. Let's click save. Okay, so we've used these 3 video clips at present, and any video clip that we use is going to have a little red dot there, so it just tells you that you've used these 3 already inside the movie clip. But I want to add a still image after this, so let's experiment with using video clips in combination with still images. So let's click on we're in the import section here. Let's click the back arrow and we'll go to the images and we'll select this one here. We'll drag and drop that onto the timeline. When we drag and drop a video clip onto the timeline, as default it's going to add it for 7 seconds, and we want it to be 5 seconds. We're going to right click, go to change photo length, and inside here we're going to type in 0500. So this will be 5 seconds, and we'll click OK. So it's reduced the duration. If we hold down the mouse button and grab this image, we're at 17 seconds. We're going to drag across here to it gets to 16 seconds. In fact, before we do that, let's move it back again and let's just see what this image looks like. So with this image, let me just zoom back in again. So at the moment I'm zoomed in on this screen, this video player here, I'm zoomed in at 100%. I'm going to hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel. So let's left click here somewhere, hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to zoom out a little bit. So we can see the top and the bottom. So the image covers the top and the bottom, but you've got these black bars down the side. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this image, go to effects and go to size and position and use the zoom function here to zoom out a little bit. And I just want to make sure there's a little dotted line around the sides here, and that will cover the full video player. So this image now covers the full video player. We can click on it and use the arrow keys, the up arrow or the down arrow, to adjust it slightly, right? Or you can click here and use your mouse wheel to move it up and down as well. So I might move it to sort of the mid position where that skyline, like the line across here, is kind of in the middle of the screen, something like this. So we need to adjust this image before we do any transitions or anything, because we don't want black bars down the side. Now we can click on the picture, drag it across. It's on 17 as default. We're going to drag it across to 16 seconds to give a 1 second crossfade. If we go back to templates, we can click on this one. We've used this one once at the beginning. We used it twice on the second fade here. So we'll go back to this one here. And of course you can use any transitions. I would advise you go and experiment with them and see which ones you like. But if we drag our mouse to here and click play, it's going to fade from a video to a still image now. So we've got this nice still image and it's going to be there for this particular duration. So let's move across the timeline and we'll drag another image. So we're going to have 2 still images and then we'll move maybe back to some video content. Let's go to import. We've used this picture. You can see a little red dot. It means it's been used. Maybe we'll do some 2 colored ones, right? So let's use this one here. It's got like red and then we'll go to blue color. Let's drag that onto the timeline and we'll move across, so we can drag across here. We'll click on this clip. Let's right click, go to photo length here and we'll set it to 5 seconds again. We'll click OK, and this time it's at 21 seconds. We're going to drag across. My advice is always move the cursor in front when you're dragging to the left, otherwise this object will try and snap to the cursor, this timeline cursor. So as we drag across, we can drag from 21 to 20, which will be right here. You can see 20 just above the timeline there. We'll let go. Let's make sure I did that right. 20 there. We'll go to templates and we used this one last, so let's use this one here. Right, so we've got these different transitions from left to right. You can see that. So we made one mistake. We didn't zoom in on this picture. So we can do this probably now. Let's try it. Let's click on it. Go to effects. Go to start size and position. And let's zoom this one in as well. Let's zoom in a bit, maybe to about here. And just make sure you see the dotted line on the outside of the video player. And that should be fine now. So we're going to transition from this one to this one. Let's left click outside here to deselect everything, and we can see that transition, and this one is going in the same direction from left to right. Let's go back to templates, and we want to go from right to left here. We want to go the opposite way, right? So we go left, and then it will come this way. I think it looks better like that. Let's go ahead and click the save button. Okay, so we've added these two images, and as we move across the timeline, we can see they're very static. They're not moving, they're not doing anything. So let's add some movement to these images. Let's have them zoom out or zoom in as they move across the timeline. Let's click on this picture, and when we click on this picture, we'll go to effects and we'll go to size and position. And you get another timeline here. This timeline in here, where I'm moving my mouse right now, this is only for the duration of this particular image. So it's finite, right? It's only the duration. And if you've ever used something like Blender or some other type of animation software, we know that we can add keyframes. So I'm going to click this little button here. It's going to add a keyframe. You can see this little dot, and right next to it is the interpolation, right? So this will set it, if we click on it once, it will set it to a curve, so it will smooth out towards the end, basically. Yeah? You've got this little curve option here. I'm going to move all the way across to the end here. So when I move to the end here, I'm going to add another keyframe. So let's add a keyframe here, and then I'm going to click on size and position, and I'm going to set this to 140 and hit enter. So the first keyframe is set to 120, and the last one is set to 140 for the size. So if we move back on the timeline just before the transition and click play, we can now see the image slowly starting to zoom in, right? And it will start to slow down towards the end because we set it to the curve option here for the interpolation, right? So let's apply that to the second image. Let's click on that second image. We should really move our cursor across the timeline. Normally I move it towards the middle, click on it, and then use this one to move right to the end. I'll click on the add keyframe. We'll set the smooth out for the keyframing here, and then we'll go and add another keyframe right here. So we could reverse that logic, but for now, let's just set this to, in fact, what we'll do is leave this at 120, and on this first keyframe, we'll set it to 140, so it will be zoomed out a bit more, and this time it's going to zoom inwards. So if we move to the timeline here, click play, it will transfer to the next image, and now it's zooming into the image rather than zooming out. So you can just apply the opposite effect on these particular keyframes. So it's quite interesting that you can animate images. We could actually rotate them. We could do quite a few different things. But for now, we do some basic things. Maybe in a bit more advanced of this tutorial today, we'll look at rotating the images. We've got loads of images to work with. So we've done quite a bit so far. If we just have a quick little review, we've got our fading at the beginning. We've got our double text layer here. And then we've got this little graphic in the corner down here, this little overlay. And then we've got our transition here. We've got a transition going back. And now we've managed to add a still image, but that still image actually has some movement to it. And this one has the opposite effect of the movement. So I think it would be wise that we maybe move back to some video content. So let's go back to the import. And we see that these two images have been used. We'll click this back arrow and we'll go back to video. And inside the video section, let's see what would be a good image, a good one to use. Let's see. I think this, let's see one with a bit of sky in there. I think maybe let's use this one here, right? So I'm going to drag that onto the timeline. Drag that. Let's just click play. Again, it's muted, but we can just click here and drag down just to make sure it's off the mute. And we just want to click on this picture or this video clip, and as we drag across, we're on 25 seconds, we're going to drag it to 24 seconds. The last transition was from right to left, so now we want to go to templates and we want to go from left to right. So let's just click here and we'll see from left to right. Let's go to here and click on this clip. Let's go to the templates. Let's go down a little bit here and click on film look. And maybe we'll choose something like let's try warm here. Let's drag that onto the video clip, and you can see it's changed its color scheme, right? It's changed the color palette. Let's try another one. Let's try, I mean, you can even do black and white. We can drag black and white. Now you've got this black and white effect. You've got this cinema effect here. You've got this green type tint to it as well, so you can use that sort of style. Got different cinema effect. This one looks pretty cool actually. It's quite dark, but I think it adds a bit of drama to it, right? Let's use that one as an example. So we want to cut this clip around here, 5 seconds, so 24 point, bang on 25, so we need to move to 30 seconds, right? 30 seconds, which will be right here. We can see 30 seconds. We'll click on this clip and cut it, and then let's delete this end part. Let's go to the save button. Okay, so we've used these 4 video clips. I want to drag this next one in, this sunset one. Let's drag that onto the timeline, and we're at 30 seconds, so we're going to drag this over to 29 seconds, 29 here. And our last transition was from left to right, so let's go back to templates. Let's go back to the transitions, which is shape transitions, and we're going to go from right to left, right? So we've got left to right, and now we've got from right to left. Let's click on this and let's go to the templates again. Let's go to the film look here, and let's use something like, let's try clean. Let's see what that does. Let's drag it here, kind of clean up the image. Warm, we'll give it that sort of warm effect. We've got fresh. Let's try fresh. I quite like fresh. Let's use fresh here. So this clip's quite long. What I want to do is try and use the Chroma key image that we downloaded. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Let's go to import. Let's click the back arrow and go to the green screen. Green screen content is here, and then we've got this hot air balloon. Now be careful when you drag and drop this onto the timeline. This particular video clip was larger than 1920 by 1080. It's going to ask you to adjust the content. We don't want to do that, so we say do not adjust. We don't want to adjust it. So it's just going to add that hot air balloon into the content. So right now you've got the green screen is overlaid, so we need to get rid of the green. Let's go to effects. Inside effects we'll go to Chroma key and we'll click the green button here, and that will remove that background. Now you've got the virgin air balloon here, and if we were to click, let's just move back here to the timeline, let's click play, and then we can see that hot air balloon kind of floating away in the distance like this. But let's go ahead and click save for a second, and let's move across this timeline. That hot air balloon is moving very, very slow. So let's click on the timeline, or let's click on this particular video clip. Let's go to speed here, and let's set it to 4. Let's set it all the way up to the top. In fact, let's set it to something like 8. It's going to move a lot quicker now, hopefully. Let's click play. It's going to move off into the distance a lot quicker, right? Let's see. So I think what we might do, let's move across the timeline to around here, really close to when the hot air balloon is at its smallest size. Let's click down here and go to size and position, and let's just drag it so that it looks like it's actually above the water, because right now down here it's not looking too great. So if we move across the timeline now, this hot air balloon should kind of move into our shot, right? So maybe if we move it here, and let's just drag it slightly off camera or off the canvas, and hopefully it should move in towards the canvas. Let's see what happens. Yeah, then it's looking a bit more kind of sensible, right? Something like this. It's a good example of using the green screen. The chroma key is really what I want to show you. Let's just drag this a little bit up here, maybe to around here. Let's see what that looks like. Just going to start here. Let's just move back a little bit and click play. So the software is, struggling to capture all of the video content I'm recording right now, and at the same time play the content at the same time. So my computer is really lagging a little bit behind. It's not the software's fault. I mean, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on here. So I think that's okay. You could click on this clip, you could change its colors and stuff. You could go into here, we can change its like contrast, we can go to colors, add some more saturation to. Let's just undo that. Let's go to this clip here and click here. fact, let's move across the timeline a bit so we can see the hot air balloon. If we click on it, then we should be able to change the saturation, right? You could bring that all the way down. You could have it sort of grayscale up. But I think as default, we'll just leave it as its default setting around here in the midpoint. We just leave the balloon as it is. Really, the idea here is to show you the chroma key function. So when you're creating content yourself, if you've got a green screen at home, or it doesn't have to be a green screen, right? It could be a black background or a white background, something that's quite flat colored, then you can go ahead and use the chroma key function here. I've already done a separate tutorial on chroma key function, a bit more detailed, so you can look at that tutorial. Just check my channel out and you can find out a bit more about chroma key. But we're going to go to the end of this video clip and we're going to leave a little bit of a gap so we can do our next transition. So let's leave a bit of a gap here, something like this. We'll click here and cut, and we'll delete this end part, and let's click the save button. Okay, let's go back to the import section. Let's go back to the folder here and go to the images, and I want to import multiple images at the same time. So let's show you how to do that. Let's drag across the timeline here, and what we'll do is left click on this one, hold down the shift key and select all of these. So we're going to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And these two have already been used. Let's drag them to the timeline. And the software will now import all of those images. Let's hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to zoom out so we can see all of these images. We're going to left click and drag across, holding down the left mouse button to select all of the images. Right click on any one of them, go to the change photo length, and we're going to set this to 0.4 seconds. And we're going to click apply to all. Let's in fact undo that, press Ctrl Z, because it's actually applying it to all of the images. We don't want to do that, so let's select them again. So press Ctrl Z to undo that. We'll select these, right click, and we'll go to change photo length, and we'll set it back to 0.4 and 0.04 seconds, and click OK. And then it says here it says change currently selected objects. Yeah, multiple objects are selected. If you wish to apply the changes to all selected objects, click change all selected. If you wish to apply changes to the current object only, then click select change current only. So there's two options here, all selected or change current selected object. We'll click all change all selected. So now we'll just change these ones and not affect the other images, right? The ones that were over here. Now we just want to do the transition. So let's select these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, these 5. We'll hold down the control key and zoom back in. Let's zoom in to about here, should be fine. In fact, a little bit closer will be better. And then we can just drag across. And we can left click here and drag backwards, then drag forward slightly. And we're at 42.13. So we want to be at 41.13. So let's drag across to 41.13. When you zoom in a bit closer, it's a little bit easier to move across the timeline like this, right? And we want 1 second crossfade. So let's hold down the shift key and click on this hold down the control key and click on this particular image. That will deselect that one, but maintain the selection on these ones. And we can drag across here, 45.13. We want 44.13 here. Then hold down the control key, click on this one, drag across, 48.13, 47.13. Hold down the control key, click here, drag across from 51.13 to 50.13 here. I think there's one more. Let's hold down the control key, click here, and then 54.13 to 53.13. Okay, so we've got the transition set up. Let's just zoom out a little bit. We can see things a bit more clearly. What transition did we use last? Let's have a look. We went from right to left. Let's just check the other one. So we've got left, we should have left to right, then right to left. So this one here, we want to, let's in fact finish that last transition. So what we're going to do is select all of the images. We need to do a transition here. So let's just zoom in. But a quick tip for you, if you move the cursor to where you want to zoom, so let's say I want to zoom in right here around this position, move the cursor to that place, hold down the control key, then use the mouse wheel, and it will zoom exactly to that position. That's a little tip for you. We're going to drag across here, we want 38.13, so we want 37.13. 37. We can do 37:15, doesn't matter. So you're like 2 frames, not going to make much difference. And we went from, let's see, right to left, so we want the left to right on this one. So let's go to templates, let's go to our shapes, transitions, and we want left to right on this one, we want right to left on this one, and we're just going to alternate them across. This one will be here, and let's go across here. We'll take this one here, and then we'll take this one here. So now we've got the alternating transitions like this, right? So we could do the zoom stuff. I've already shown you how to do that. So maybe what we'll do, let's just see. We need to fix the size of these pictures first. So let's click on this one, go to effects, scroll down and go to the glow. Let's scroll down and go to size and position. And you can see the black bars down the side. Let's just zoom in here a little bit to around here, 120. We'll click on the next picture, move the cursor across to this image here, then click on the picture. We want to zoom this one. I think 120 is going to be good, so we can just type 120 here. We'll click here, then click on this picture, and then we'll set this one. This one's actually pretty good, so some of you got to be a bit careful, so we might zoom this just a little bit. Like here, you just want to make sure there's a little dotted line around the frame here. We'll click here, and this one we can probably just set to 120, and that will zoom in. Let's move across the timeline. Let's click here, select this image. This one's pretty good, so we might just use the up arrow here and zoom in a little bit, like 104. We'll click here, select this image, and we'll set this one to 120. Right, and then you can adjust them, you can move them up and down. You can click here, maybe move it up or down, or reposition it however you feel like. So we've got the images set up quite quickly here, right? It doesn't take too long. That's our little video thing here. And here we've got these little transitions. So we want to do probably something with this rather than just leaving them as they are. But let's show you a couple of other functions in here. So let's take, for example, this picture. Let's click on it. And let's say that we wanted to flip this image around. We want to reverse the image so the trees are on this side, for example, for whatever reason. We'll click on this picture. We'll go to effects. And in the view animation, we're going to click on rotation. And inside the rotation, we can start to rotate this image, right? We can rotate it. We don't want to rotate it this way. We want to rotate it this way, like this. So we want to set this value to 180. And now the trees will be on this side. So we can see as we transition across, the trees will be on that side. And this one's okay, I guess. Maybe we'll rotate this one as well, just as an example. So we need to click on the picture. Remember to click on it, click on rotation, and then we'll set the value in here to 180. I'm just showing you some examples. If you wanted to flip a picture, you can do the same with video content as well. It's not just pictures. So if we move back across the timeline, let's say where we've got video, let's say this content here. Let's say we wanted the water for whatever reason on this side, and we was going to overlay some text on this. We can click on this particular clip, click on rotation and set it to 180, and we can flip video around as well, like that as well. Yeah, we can flip video like that as well. So we've got the ocean here, quite a lot of transitions. Everything's looking pretty good. So we want to do maybe something with these images. Let's try and do something with them. Let's see on this first one. Before we do that, let's click the save button. Okay, so let's show you how to add some other sort of transition effects. Let's click on this video player here and we zoom back in. So hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out here, right? We'll zoom to 100%. You can see the percentage written right here, what zoom you are. And we want to add like some sort of effect. We want to combine a couple of effects. So we want to zoom but also rotate the content, this image, as an example. So what we'll do is click on the size first, and in the timeline we want to move right to the end of the timeline, or the beginning should I say. Here you can see here, so make sure you click on the picture and then move to the beginning of the timeline here, what you see here, and click add keyframe, and then we'll set it to curve interpolation here, and then we'll go all the way to the end and we'll add another keyframe. And whatever work we're going to do it on the first keyframe. Let's go back to the first keyframe and we're going to go to the rotation, and we're going to set the rotation here to 45 degrees. So we can't really see what's going on here, but let's go to the size and position. Let's set that to 180. So we set the size and position to 180 on this keyframe, and we'll also set the rotation to 45 degrees on this keyframe. What you can actually do is drag this. Let's just drag this a little bit here. You can just resize it. If you can't see things clearly in here, if it's like down here somewhere, you can just drag it up a little bit, right? Just to see things a bit clearly. You can expand it here as well, and you can see all of the different keyframes that are being added. And we can see there's one for the width, the height, because we're changing the size, and there's also one for where is it? The rotation. So let's minimize this, and let's just go down here. And what we want to do is zoom out on this picture. So let's click in here. Right now we can only actually see the video. This is the video clip. We're going to hold down the control key and zoom right out. Use the mouse wheel to zoom out, and we're going to zoom to about 45%. And you can see the shape here. This is actually the shape of the picture, because we rotated it 45 degrees and we also increased its size. The reason we did that is we just want to left click here and drag and make sure we're covering. So you see the little dotted line, make sure we're covering the whole video player here. Now when we click the play button, it's going to do the transition, and it's going to kind of rotate around and fade in like this. Let's just go back here and click play, and we can kind of see that working here like this. This is another example of combining two different types of transitions, or two different types of rotation and size against a single image. You could do that with video as well. This could have been a video clip kind of doing that effect as well. So you've got different options in here, you know. I have to stick with one option. Let's move to the second video clip. Let's click, or the second image. Let's click on that. Let's move across the timeline to the beginning, and we'll just do a simple one here. So we'll click start position. Let's add a keyframe. Let's minimize this, and we'll just put the curve here on the keyframe. Let's go to the end. Let's add another keyframe here, and we'll go back to the beginning. We'll make sure our timeline is here. Yep, that's correct. And all we do is set the zoom to, let's set it to something like 140. Alright, we'll click the play button, and then that jellyfish is going to zoom like this. So we want a bit of movement on each one of these pictures. Let's find one, like, let's see, this one. Yeah, let's just do the same here, but we'll reverse it on this one. So let's click on this one, move to the end of the timeline. Let's minimize this. Add a keyframe here. If you add a keyframe, you can actually click this bucket to delete it as well, and you can copy keyframes here. So we'll just keep it simple. You can click this one, and that will move to the previous keyframe and the current keyframe. So let's go across the timeline. We'll click add a keyframe. We can use this arrow to go back to the first keyframe, the previous one. That makes life a little bit easier rather than dragging it across. We'll go to start position, and we'll set this to 140. In fact, we'll leave that at 104, and we'll go to the end one, and we'll set that to 140. So we're going to zoom out rather than zoom in on this one, right? So this one was zooming in, this one's going to zoom out. On this one, we're going to click here. Let's click this save button. Okay, so on this next image, I want to add a lens flare. I want to show you how to add a lens flare. So as we move across this timeline, we've got this one zooming in, and on this particular picture, I want to add a lens flare. Let's click here. Let's go to effects. And inside effects, we've got lens flare. So as you scroll down under video effects, you've got lens flare. Let's click that, and then click apply lens flare. So at the moment, you'll see nothing really shows. It's because it's got no intensity. So we need to increase the intensity, and then you'll start to see the lens flare appear. Normally what I do is increase the intensity, and you can change the tint here just to brighten it up a little bit. And at the top here, you've got like the colors. So you can get rid of reds, you can get rid of blues. These are RGBs, right? Red, green, and blue. You can adjust the colors to suit your scene. And here's the left and right position, so you can adjust the position. We're going to animate this lens flare. So right now, we just leave it anyway. It doesn't really matter. Let's just leave it around here. And you can change the size of the lens flare, and you can change its perspective, right? You can actually change its perspective. So I think the first thing we'll do is move across the timeline here. And what we'll do is let's set the perspective, let's set it all the way up to 1 here, a value of 1 right here. Let's move across the timeline, and we need to expand the lens flare here, expand the the settings, because we can add keyframes for each individual element. We're going to click on the perspective and add a keyframe. So make sure you add a keyframe here, click on it, add keyframe, then let's go to the end and let's add another keyframe. And the perspective, we're going to bring that right down to around somewhere around here. So as we move, you can see it's going to do this sort of effect. We also want to move it across the screen. Let's set this to a curved keyframing curve here for the interpolation, right? So it has a curve, so it'll kind of smooth out, easy in and easy out. That's what we call it in After Effects, right? Easing. This is the easing option, and we want to change its position. So let's click on the X. The X will move it across the screen, and Y will move it up and down. So we'll click on X, and on the X position here, we want to set it to, let's set it to -1. So -1 will be this bottom left hand corner. That's where it's going to start, -1. And we'll click here and add a keyframe. Then we'll go all the way to the end and we'll add another keyframe. And let's just set that to curved frames as well. And on this end keyframe, we're going to set the light position to +1. It's going to go from -1 to +1. So as we, let's see, this one here, let's click on that keyframe. This should be set to -1, yeah? -1 here, and this end one should be +1. So it should move across the screen now and change perspective like this. So you can play around with these keyframes, you can change this intensity, you can keyframe all of these options in here for the lens flare. This is a little bit advanced, but it's worth knowing this stuff. It's quite interesting to do stuff like this, right? In Magix Movie Edit Pro. So the image itself is very static. So let's put some sort of animation to this image. Let's scroll up this timeline. Let's minimize all of this, and let's move down to the image and let's click on its size and position. And we will add a keyframe for the size and position here. Let's add a keyframe, and then let's go to the end here and let's add a keyframe as well for size and position. And let's minimize this. We're not really need to see all of this, and we just want to probably zoom out here to 140. So in theory, our image will now zoom and also have the lens flare applied to it as well, which I think makes it a little bit more interesting. So we're taking still images and we're using some of the effects in Magix Movie Edit Pro to create effects like this, which I think is quite interesting. So that's how you add the keyframes and use the lens flare option. Let's click the save button here. Okay, so we've done quite a few edits to these images. I've shown you some different techniques, these lens flares. Let's look at this next picture. Let's click on this picture and go to general options here. So we're in effects, in the first section here. We're going to go to general options. You get loads of different options in here to manipulate images and video content. So you can do things like black and white to color. So when you click this, it will add that transition from black and white to color. You've got loads of different options, and I won't go through all of them. You've got like focus ones, which are quite good to have. They defocus or refocus. That's quite blurred, and then you can focus in on the image depending on what you want to do. The lens one is pretty cool. So you've got this sort of lens effect, right? Some sort of blur lens effect. Got this one here as well. The one that I want to use though is the warm slide, right? So it will go from quite a bright warm color, slide down to its original color. Let's drag that onto the picture, and then you can see the transition has been added. So we've got our original transition slide, but then it will start from warm and then fade out like this. Let's click on this picture. Let's go back to the beginning of the timeline. Let's minimize this. Click on size and position. Let's add a keyframe for this zoom, right? So let's click add a keyframe. Let's just set it to smooth out on both of these. Go to the end keyframe, add another keyframe, and we'll set the zoom at the beginning. Let's click on that keyframe and set it to 140. So it's going to zoom, but also have that color effect applied to it as well, right, at the same time. So here we're using like some predefined components, but also keyframing our work as well. Let's click on this last image. Let's go back to the general options, and inside this one I want to do from black and white. Well, you can do from like hue saturation mix as well. This one's pretty cool. So maybe we'll use this one. Let's drag this one onto the timeline, and then we've got this sort of grayscale almost, or this hue saturation to quite a strong prominent color. Something like this will be pretty cool. So let's just add some sort of movement to this one. And what we do is go to size and position, and I want to add a keyframe, right? So we need to move to the beginning of the timeline. Let's just minimize this. Let's click on this zoom here, right? We want to click on the zoom, add a keyframe, and then go to the end here and also add a keyframe. And then we'll go back to the beginning. Let's zoom out a fair amount. Let's click inside here and hold down the control key to zoom out a little bit. And what we might do is just we might rotate this, I think. So let's go to the rotation tool, and let's rotate it a small amount. We don't want to rotate it this way. Let's just see, we want to rotate it on this one here, just like a slight rotation, something like around here. And let's just move across the timeline, and now you can see the water and the image itself is rotating slightly, right? So we're applying multiple effects to this one. We've got a zoom, we've got a rotation, and at the same time we've got this color fade as well. So we're using 3 effects on this one particular image. Let's click the save button. Okay, so let's go back over to the import section, and we've used all of our images. So let's click back the arrow and let's go to the videos, and we've still got a few more videos to use up here. So we've got this one here, these 2 here, and we've got these 2 down here. So let's take this one of this waterfall and let's drag that into the timeline. So like usual, we're going to click on that waterfall. It's at 56 seconds and 15. So we're going to move to 55 seconds and let's see, 15, 55, 15 here. So we've got our crossfade. Let's go to the templates. The last transition we used was from right to left. So now we want to go from left to right. This one, left to right. And we'll have that transition applied. We can zoom back in now a little bit. So let's hold down the control key and zoom back in on this image. There's a few other things we can do in Magix. There's lots of things we can do. Let's click on this picture, and it looks a bit washed out, right? It's water, I guess, but it looks like it could have a bit more vibrancy to it. So let's click here. Let's go to templates, and let's go to our film look. And I think let's try warm. Let's drag warm onto this. Warm, and this will just give it a bit more color to it. I'm not quite convinced that's the right one, so let's try cool. Let's try clean, and let's finally try fresh. I think fresh looks pretty good. Quite like this sort of color scheme, right? The water looks a bit better and everything looks like it's got a bit more color to it, which is good. So let's move to this point of the timeline. We're at 56:15, so we want to add 5-second duration here. So we'll be at 1 minute. Let's see, we'll be at 1 minute. We're at 56:15, so we're going to be at 1:05, right? Let's see, 1:15, 1115 here. That will be our 5-second duration there. Let's click here and cut it, and we'll delete this end part. So we've got our duration here. Let's click inside this middle of this clip, and let's go back to effects. And inside effects, I just want to show you like the cookie cutter tool. So we've got this cookie cutter tool. Let's click apply effect, and then you get like this rounded circle, right, with this black in the background. And you can click on this drop down and select different types of options. You've got like arrowheads, you've got diamonds, but we're going to stick with this circle. And with the circle, we can feather out the edge, so we can blur out these edges so it doesn't look so sharp. And we can add a border, and the border will reduce, like, you can almost do like this James Bond effect, right, with like the little circle thing going on. And then you can repeat this across, so you can like repeat it this way, you can repeat it this way. So you can have this sort of cookie cutter effect. You can change its size like this. You can get some nice effects out of this. And you can also animate these effects, right? You can animate these transitions. You can change its center point, and you can apply the effect in the opposite mask. So you can have like the cutout in the opposite way, you could say. So you can click here and reset everything. Click here, and that will just reset. Click apply effect, and then you can do cutaway. You have like a black circle with the content around it. So I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but I guess there's a reason for everything. Maybe you could use that as like a layer mask and maybe layer mask something else in the middle. Possibly we could do that. I'm not sure how to do that, but I guess we can always figure that out at some point. So we've got these arrowheads. Maybe we'll use something like, I think this, like an oval shape will be a sensible one. Let's see if we can rotate this oval. Let's see. This will be its center point, right? We can move it. I think we can rotate this though. We can feather it though. Let's have everything inside. I think we'll feather it out like this. So this is almost like having that sort of faded edge effect, right? Sometimes you see that in sort of video clips where you have that sort of faded edge effect. So I think we'll leave this one like this. We just have that sort of faded off. We can reduce the size or increase the size. Maybe we won't have it. We'll increase it so it's just faded just around the edges here. A little fade around the edge. We can change its border shape as well. We can change its repeat, but there's no point in doing that. So I think we'll leave it like this and just have this little fade across the edges just to add a little bit to this image. I just want to show you how to do that, how to use this cookie cutter tool. There's loads of other tools in here we're going to have a look at in a moment. Let's go ahead and drag the next video clip in here. So let's go back to import. We've got this one here of this ocean. Let's drag this one here. And let's move across the timeline. This one's quite interesting. You've got this little splash here, right? So we want to keep that. So this one we just custom cut it. We don't have to do it to a specific duration always. So maybe we'll do it to around, let's see, around here somewhere. I think about here. So I'm not really worried how long it is. I just want to cut it and keep that amount of the clip. Let's delete this end part and we'll drag this slightly. We're at 1 minute, 1 second, 15 frames. So let's just drag this back 1 second to, let's see, here. And then we'll go and add our transition. So let's go, we used from left to right. So let's go back to templates and use the shape transition. And we'll use right to left here. Let's go ahead and click the save button here. Okay, so for this last video clip here that we've added, we can see that there's this splash effect here, right? Well, it's not even an effect, it's just some splashing water here. So I want to add like this sort of pixel blur, and when it gets to that particular point, I want it to be quite sharp. So let's click on this particular video clip, and we're going to go to the, let's see, where is it? Art filter here. Click on art filter, and let's drag this handle all the way to the beginning, and we'll click on this dilate. Let's just drag it a little bit. Let's just drag it across a small amount, let's say like 14, and then we'll click add keyframe, and then we'll set that value all the way back down to 0, and let's just set it to easy and easy out, and we drag across this timeline. As we drag across, we want to get to where the splash is quite prominent around here, and we're going to add another keyframe. Let's go all the way back to the first keyframe, and we'll move this dilate across here. Let's say it's around 56, and let's see what happens, right? So here you can see it's all that pixelated kind of style, and as it gets towards the splash, it's going to clarify, and then you're going to see that splash there like this. So that's just another little effect that you can apply to your content. Sometimes you see that sort of blurry sort of effect in some content. And that's just this little filter applied to it. You can play around with all of these settings. I'll leave you to experiment with them. But I just wanted to show you that little sort of effect there that you can apply to some video content. Let's just go back here and click play. We can just see that working. Yeah, and the time is pretty good. Now if you want to adjust the keyframe, let's just say that it wasn't, you know, the blur effect, we want it to be a bit more forward. Rather than redoing all your keyframes, you can just click on a keyframe and just drag it across. Let's say we drag it to around this position here, the end keyframe. And if we move back again, you'll see it's still kind of pixelated, and then as the water gets out, it's going to smooth out. So that's another way just to move the keyframes. And this one is not at the end, remember? It's kind of positioned around here, so that it kind of removes that effect as and when the splash comes across. You can see it's all nice and clear. That's kind of a nice effect to apply on this particular clip. So I'm just showing you some of the tools and the way that I use them when I create content, right? Let's go back and let's actually click the save button, go back to import. We've got a few more video clips. We've got these two down here. So let's drag, I think we used this one probably last. Let's drag this one into the timeline, and let's see where we are on the timeline. So we're at 108.29, and let's see, 108.29. So we want to be at 107.29. Let's drag this back to 107.29. That will be our 1 second duration. I think the last crossfade was, it's hard to remember these crossfades where they're sequenced. So this is left to right, this is right to left, so this one will be left to right. Let's go to here. Here's our crossfade. We'll drag that one into here, and then we've got this crossfade going across here. Okay, so let's do something with this particular video clip. Let's click this save button, save our work. Okay, let's go ahead and click on this particular video clip here of this water. I don't want to change like the water color here. There's a way that you can do this in Magix. What we can do is click on this glow function. So we'll go to the effects section, go to glow, and click apply effect, and we can change the glow percentage and its intensity. So as we increase the intensity, you can kind of see it's like masking over the water here. You can adjust like the glow percentage and also the suppression here. So we're going to increase the suppression and we can change the color. So let's say we want to change it to like I don't know, let's just pick a color here, maybe like a purple color, right? Like this purple. Then if we move back across the timeline, we can reduce the suppression or increase it, and we can reduce the glow. We should try and get this to look a bit more realistic. Let's see, let's increase this here. Let's move back here and click play. And we've pretty much changed the water color to this sort of purple shade. Alright, I think we can improve that a bit more. Let's just, you really got to like play around with these settings to get it quite right. You've got to be a bit more careful with what we're doing. Let's see it around here. We might reduce this color down a little bit here. It depends on what color you want to make it, really, to be fair. All of these settings will change the color. You can make it like a crazy green if you want, like some toxic waste color, but then you've got like this green effect. You can isolate and change the colors here, right? Maybe somewhere around here, and we'll increase this. I think that purple looked quite crazy, so let's try and get that purple back. We've got to play around with the settings a bit here to get it to where you want. I think around here it looks pretty good. Let's go back here and click play. Now we've got like this purple water effect just by changing the settings in here and changing the glow function, right? You can apply this to other objects as well. It doesn't have to be water. You can apply it to other things and just experiment with it. Try and get it to look a little bit more realistic. You can see like the glow here and how it's been applied as an overlay. It's really about experimenting with the options in here to get it to look as realistic as possible. So something around here I think will look pretty good. Let's see what that looks like. So that looks a bit more realistic, yeah, in terms of the colors or that effect being applied. So it's quite interesting. You can do this stuff in Magix. You know, you may want to make it more realistic but just add a bit more blue to it, so it's got more of a blue tint, so then it looks more realistic, but you're still changing that color, and that's got more of this sort of blue shade to it. So we'll leave that at the blue. I think that looks a bit more sensible, right? Something like that. I think that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and cut this clip. We'll cut it around here, just a rough cut. Let's cut it around here. In fact, let's cut it on the, let's see. Let's just adjust this slightly. In fact, I want to make it a different color. Let's make it something that it should never be. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, we'll leave it like that. That's fine. You know, you get the idea of how to use it, so that's most important. Let's move to around here and we'll cut it around here. So let's cut this, delete this end part. Let's go back to our import, and we've got this sunset left, and with sunset with view. So we've got this last clip. Let's drag that into the timeline. This is our winter clip. Let's mute all of these. Make sure we mute them, right? Because when we add content or audio, overlay audio to it, we want to make sure everything's muted in here. So all of these are muted. They're fine. Let's just see. So we've got this like winter waterscape type image or video. And let's see, where are we? We're at 1625 on the timeline, and we want to go back to 1525. Let's drag it to 1525. Will be our 1 second transition. Let's just make sure that's right. 1525. And our last one, I think, was right to left. Let's just check. It was left to right. So let's go to templates. Let's go to shape, and then we want right to left, right? Yep, that way, and then that way on the way back. So let's add one more last effect to this. Let's see what we can do, and then we'll finish off the video clip and add in our music. Okay, let's go ahead and click on this last clip. So this is the one with this sort of water effect. I just want to show you some basic sort of things that we can do with this. Let's click on it and go to effects. Inside effects option, we've got this move option. It allows you to kind of simulate the movement of a camera. So let's say, for example, you want to use brakes. So this first one, if we click play, it will the camera will kind of pan downwards, and then this scene is already moving forwards anyway. And we can go from bottom to top, and you can kind of add these sort of camera movements to your content quite quickly, without actually having shot that movement itself, if that makes sense. So you've got loads of different ones here that you can go and experiment with. There's loads of different stuff in here that you can play around with depending on the type of content that you're creating. You know, you've got linear movements. There's loads and loads of different options in here. You've got panoramic, like zigzag, so you can move across content. You need like better quality content than this, to be fair, but it's kind of moving across this sort of direction in this sort of shape, right? Panning around the content. But if we had better quality content, we could have zoomed into here and done this, and it would look a lot better, to be fair. You've got ones that are at angles, you've got ones that rotate, and you've got like these judders and shakes. So you've got loads of different things here. So you know, you've got camera sort of shakes and wobbles, got fast zooms, zooming in, zooming out. There's loads of different ones to experiment with and for you to play around with. The one I'm going to use though is the really nice simple one. I like kind of this one here, where it just sort of moves in. Maybe top to bottom is better. So we can click that and drag and drop it onto the video clip. And then if we move across the timeline here and click play, let's just move again here. You can kind of see the camera moving downwards, and you can see the keyframes that is added for that particular effect. So I think that's quite an interesting way to move your camera or move your content. So if you filmed it afterwards and you wanted that type of downwards movement effect, but you never actually filmed that in the shot itself when you was filming, you can apply it to the video content in this post-production. So let's go towards the end of this timeline. Let's click around here and we'll cut it and we'll delete this end part. And let's see what we put. What clip did we put at the very beginning? I'm interested to remember. It's like this ocean one, right? So what we could do is maybe copy all of this content at the beginning and use that for the end sequence. So let's just use the mouse. Let's left click on this one, hold down the shift key and select all of this content here. Select it all, press Ctrl C to copy. Let's move all the way down to the end of the timeline and click around here and then press Ctrl V to paste it. That would be nice if we could move all of these objects in one element. So if I left click and start dragging this one, it's moving it by itself, right? So I want to select all of them and then press the letter G. The letter G will group all of these objects. So if I left click and click on this, for example, and then come back, you can see they're all pre-selected. It doesn't matter which one I select, or as I drag them, they will all be grouped together. To ungroup things, we need to press Control G, I believe. No, that's incorrect. So if you press Control G, go back to Window. I do that sometimes by mistake. Go to Window, Arrangement, and click Standard. I do that sometimes, but normally it's like Control G and to group things in other software. To ungroup is actually Shift and G. So Shift and G will ungroup the objects. Now you can move them individually. And if you select all of them, press the letter G on its own to group them, yeah? So press G, select them, press G to group, and then Shift and G to ungroup. If you ever press Control G and all this craziness happens and you don't know what's going on, just go to Window, Arrangement, and click Standard, and you'll be back to your interface again. Sometimes I do that Control G by accident and then I end up with that window like that. I don't really want that, so let's select all of these, press G to group them, and then let's get rid of this fade transition at the beginning here. Let's remove that, and let's see where we are on this timeline. So we're here, we're at 1 minute 23 seconds and 22 frames. We're going to be at 1 minute 22 seconds and 22 frames. 22 seconds and 22 frames. I think we have to get away with it around here. Around here, our last transition was, what was it? It was right to left. So let's go to templates. Let's go to this transition and drag it here. And then we'll have this transition here. Then we're back to our original slide at the beginning. We've got our ocean life thing going on here. That will fade out. And then we've got this transition here. We don't want this transition. Let's click here. So if you click on the transition itself, you can say no cut fade. And that will get rid of that end transition there, right? One thing to bear in mind, sometimes by accident you might drag this handle here at the top. And if you drag that handle, in effect what you're doing is cutting your clip here. You don't want that, because when you go to export later it's going to be a problem. So just double click on the left hand side here, and that will make sure the in point and the out point are set to their maximum value, so the out point be right at the end here. Let's just scrub across this timeline. Let's click here, scrub across, and really we just want to fade this to black. So let's click here and drag, and that will allow us to now fade to black. So we're going to fade out to black, and we're pretty much done apart from adding the audio. So let's click the save button here. Okay, let's go back to our import section, and let's move all the way to the beginning of the timeline, and we're going to hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to zoom out a little bit. Let's just zoom out a little bit so we can see more of this content. Let's click the mouse timeline here right at the beginning, and we'll hold down the shift key and we can just zoom out a little bit here so we can see. In fact, we don't need to go that far. We need to see 5 layers, right? This is our bottom layer. We're going to add the audio. Let's go to import. We've used all of the video, we've used all of the images, and we've used the green screen as well and the transparent PNG. So let's go to music, and we'll click in here, and we can drag our first music clip onto here, and let's click the save button here. Okay, so let's click the play button and let's hear this audio. And one thing we'll notice, the audio doesn't start straight away, and it just starts quite abruptly, and we want to kind of fade this audio in. So what I'm going to do is move my mouse cursor to here. I'm going to drag upwards like this, just so that I can see more of the timeline below. Then I can hold down the shift key and use the mouse wheel to zoom in, and then I can actually see the waveform or the audio here a little bit more clearly. And what we want to do is move across the timeline and work out where does this audio start and stop. So let's click the play button. So right about here is where the audio starts. I'm going to click here and cut. So I'm going to get rid of this blank content here and drag across here. And then I want to set this audio to around minus 12 dB. I want it to be quite quiet, but I want to fade it in. So I'm going to click this handle and drag it across. Now if we go back and click play, the music will gradually fade in over a period of time. And that might be a bit too slow, that fade, so we'll fade it a bit quicker. So that's okay. Let's hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to zoom out. So this one audio clip will actually fill the whole track, right? The whole of our duration. Our duration was only like, something like where are we? About 1 minute 30 seconds, just under 1 minute 30. So let's cut this clip and let's crossfade some audio. So let's move to around this position here. Let's say around here, maybe just after this hot air balloon thing's done. Let's click here and cut it. So when you're cutting, one thing to remember, one thing to be very careful of is when you want to cut some content, make sure you select it first, then cut it, right? If you just cut straight away, so let's say if I move to this position here, if I were to if I select nothing, so nothing's selected, I hit the cut button, it's going to slice through all of the layers. So slice these two up here and this one down below. We don't want that, so let's press Ctrl Z to undo. Let's click here, and then we'll move to this position here and cut it. Let's delete this. Let's fade this one out here. So we'll move to the end here and just fade it out. similar sort of fade to the one at the beginning. Let's drag it and fade it out. Let's go back to this waterfall and drag this one in, and we'll snap it to the end here. Let's just snap it to the end here. Let's right click, go to set volume and set it to -12 dB, so it's running at the same volume. Let's click play and hear it, and that one starts straight away, right? And as this one's fading out, I kind of want this one to fade in, so let's stop this. Let's fade this one in, and then we'll crossfade them like this. There's a little crossfade in between them, and let's go back and click play. And then we'll have a little crossfade. It's not the best example. You can experiment and play around with that a little bit more. I think we need to crossfade these on a longer duration for it to sound right. That's a bit better. So you have to play around with that, or you could just fade one out and have a little bit of silence in between them. So you could just fade this one right out, and then maybe just fade this one in on the other end, and that might be a better option, just to fade them out and fade the next one in. I think that's a better option. Let's cut here. Let's cut this audio. Let's drag in our final one into here. Let's right click and let's go to set volume, and we'll set it to -12 dB, and we'll fade one out, and we'll fade this one in, and then we just want to cut at the end of this video. So let's go to the end of the video clip. Let's click here and cut this audio here, and then we'll fade this one out towards the end as well. So we've got these fading in and fading out. Let's just check the fade out. Let's move probably to about here. Click play. And it fades out. So we're pretty much done. We've done quite a lot of techniques. I've tried to show you as much as possible. Obviously this isn't everything. There's still some other features to show you, so I might make a second video just explaining things in more detail. But one thing we need to do now is really export this. Now if you've been watching my channel, I've shown you how to export video in different ways. There's this simple option up here where you click and you can export, but also show you how to batch process, and that's kind of a better option because you can minimize the screen and go and do other things while it's exporting. So why don't we export this, and then we can actually watch this video. We'll actually see what it looks like afterwards. It would be interesting for me to see it because I haven't seen it yet myself. So let's go to File, Batch Conversion. Now normally batch conversion, you're batch converting lots of different videos in one go, and I've done a tutorial explaining that, so you can maybe go and check my channel and you see an explanation of batch processing. But even when I'm exporting just a single video, I still use batch processing. So I'll go to File, Batch Conversion, click here, and this is the video clip that we're going to be exporting. It's actually the clip that is we've just been working on. So in here I'm going to select MPEG-4 in this drop down, and this one is selected. I'm going to click Advanced Settings, and inside Advanced Settings I'm going to set it to 30 frames a second. Let's run it at 30 frames a second. Will be good for us. And we'll turn on anti-interlace flickering. Let's turn that on. We shouldn't really need it, but let's turn it on anyway. You can click on Advanced Settings and change the bit rates, but Magix normally gives you pretty much a good quality one here. The settings here as default. Let's click on the let's see what it's going to save it. Desktop. Let's click on this open folder. Let's go to the project folder, and it's going to be called Ocean Life-01.mp4. Let's click save here, and then we can click OK, and then we can click start processing. So when I click start processing, this little window pops up. The reason why I'm using batch processing is I can click this little option here, and I can minimize and go and do some other work. And this is batch processing, or exporting this video in the background. Right, that's why I use the batch processing. Even if I'm exporting one video, I can minimize it and go and do some other work. So what we'll do is let's just expand this for now. It's almost finished exporting, but I'm going to pause the video and then we can watch this example video that we created today. Okay, so Magix has finished exporting the video. This is normally, if there's a problem, you'll see export unsuccessful, and it will tell you why, or some reason why it didn't export properly. But normally 9 times out of 10, or most of the time, you're going to see export successful here. We'll click the OK button. Let's click the save button just to save our work. We can close that Magix Movie Edit Pro now. And what are we left with? Inside this folder, we'll see the MP4 file. So let's close this and open up the MP4 file, and we can check out what work we've finished today. Okay, so overall, I think the video content was pretty good. Obviously, we can make quite a few improvements on that particular clip, but the idea here today was just to show you how to start editing, cutting, adding images, manipulating content, color grading, and doing lots of different functions, or using lots of different functions in Magix Movie Edit Pro. I try to cover as much as possible. Like I mentioned on my channel, I've made some more sort of bite-sized tutorials. So if you want to recap on something, I've done like specific tutorials on exporting content, on doing different things in Magix Movie Edit Pro, but they're much shorter tutorials just so that you can get up to speed on specific elements within Magix Movie Edit Pro. So that's the end of this tutorial. I know it was a bit long, but sometimes you need to explain things thoroughly in order for you to learn and understand. You can come back and watch this video if you're not sure about something, and hopefully it will help you. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.